The next matchup for me, I feel like it should be higher. Granted, we only have three left. The 3v6 matchup in the East, which is Bucks Heat. It's we know what happened last year. Everyone always questions Milwaukee. I think the reason I almost feel like this intrigue level is inflated by me. I don't think the Heat have a chance in this series. I'm just curious how you feel.
So it's I think maybe like my second most interesting series, but then I have Bucks in five. So I agree. Like I want to. I mean, it's all the case is all there, right? You know, Miami handed it to him last year. Eric Spoelstra is a great postseason coach. They have Adebayo to get in Giannis's way. That's worked. We've seen that work in the past. Just the Heat. Again, the kind of like the Boston thing. I think the Heat are. I think they played over their heads last year, obviously, to make the finals. They're not even as good as last year's regular season Heat, and the playoff Heat were three notches above that. So they're not starting at the same level as they were when they made their jump last year. But it's more gut thing. It's the pressure on Budenholzer, the fact that he has failed to adjust a million times, and nobody forces adjustments more than the Heat and more than Spoelstra. But then it's just a talent thing, and the Bucks have so much of it, and they really have kind of played this season in anticipation of having to play different styles in a playoff series. And so if they're ever going to be ready for the Heat or a team like the Heat, it's got to be now. But I agree, it's still like a super interesting series. If the Bucks lose Game 1, for example, can you imagine what the vibes are going to be? It's going to be, I mean, it'll be fantastic. But same. It's hard to see a way for the Heat to win the series or even really be competitive, since I'm picking a 5-game series. But I agree with you that there's just something about it that feels, like there's the potential for something interesting.
And look, the fact that I know we talked about how much more the Bucks switched, but they per synergy increased the frequency with which they played zone, basically by 6 times. I'm wondering if that matters versus the Heat, because they improved their 3-point clip a bunch towards the end of the season since about April 1st. But you look at them, and they don't have a ton of great shooters. Jimmy Butler doesn't take a bunch of threes anymore. Adebayo lives from the mid-range more than he's going to from beyond, and you'll be okay with him taking those looks. There's Duncan Robinson, but who's just the guy that's going to be lights out aside from Duncan Robinson? And if you can force the Heat to sort of live on the perimeter, it's like similar to what the Heat were trying to do with Giannis last year. I will say that is the pathway, though, because the Heat excel or know how to play zone so well. Does that give Milwaukee problems? I think, look, Eric Bledsoe was dog shit for New Orleans this year. Maybe he had a lot of stuff going on. I personally had to change teams, pandemic, all that. Not trying to dump all over him, actually. Jrue Holiday's a massive upgrade offensively.
Huge.
Can score at every level, where Bledsoe just, in the postseason specifically, cannot. And is Miami zone going to be that effective then against Milwaukee when you have Jrue Holiday and Middleton on the court at the same time? The other thing to note here, and the numbers don't support the finishing as with Giannis as a screener, but the fact that he's doing it more and can be used as a decoy in those instances, maybe that's a way to bust through Miami zone at points. I honestly don't know. I'm genuinely curious. My X factor here would be Mike Budenholzer, to see how many adjustments he actually makes throughout the series. Is he willing? Look, the Bucks made a ton of adjustments this year, so if that informs what's going to happen, they'll be fine, I guess. But it's Mike Budenholzer. We have to, is it Giannis's jumper, if you want to say that? The other thing I want to see from them is what I was getting at. They didn't really play, and I know PJ Tucker was injured for a bit. We didn't see a ton of PJ Tucker and Giannis as the primary front court. I think that's something that in every single playoff matchup that they'll have is going to be important. Are they going to go to more of that? How much are you relying on Brook Lopez? You're so good at preventing shots at the rim, but is going up against Jimmy Butler sort of a different beast there? My X factor for Miami is Tyler Herro. Played so well in the bubble at points last year. Very up and down this year. Had a pretty strong close to the season, though. And they need someone other than Butler and Adebayo. You can even talk me into Dragic just because he's not the same player he was last season. You can talk me into Trevor Ariza too, because he has to play the role of Jay Crowder, which is part of what made the Heat so dangerous last year. Crowder had some really good moments defending Antetokounmpo. They lost that. I'm not going to say that Jay Crowder is the sole reason the Heat aren't where they were last season, but he's a bigger reason than I think people have really noted, because you can do things like maybe Andre Iguodala helps you there. You lose a hell of a lot of floor spacing if you're playing Bam, Butler and Iguodala at the same time.
Yeah, how dare you take both of my X factors? I was gonna say Tucker, kind of in the same.
To be fair,
in
I
the
named
same.
half the Heat's roster, so there's a good chance I was going to steal your
True.
Heat X
I was
factor.
Dragic was gonna be my backup, and then you just went ahead and listed him off too. I think Tucker. So sort of in the same vein as I'm interested in what Ibaka is gonna look like. Because Tucker's so important in theory for what the best version of this Bucks team wants to be. And I certainly was not satisfied in the regular season that he's anything close to Rockets PJ Tucker, that could do PJ Tucker stuff for, I don't know, 25 minutes a game. I mean, even that, so I want to know, maybe this isn't the series where the Heat or where the Bucks either need that. I just would echo the Herro stuff because I don't think it's realistic to expect Dragic to have just another incredible turn back the clock postseason run. So if there's going to be sort of an over performer, it makes more sense for it to be Herro since he can get his own shot, he can get his own tough shots. That's kind of the problem, but tough shots might be all that the Heat can generate against this defense anyway, with all the length it has. And I mean, if he gets locked up on Drew Holiday, good luck to you. But yeah, the Heat are going to need ways to score, especially from the perimeter. Because the Bucks are going to surrender threes if they play their base defense, so somebody's going to have to hit them, and so Herro seems like the likeliest candidate for that.
The other thing with, did you have a Bucks X factor?
I'm just going to say Tucker.
It also could be Bryn Forbes, but I think that's really dependent on Budenholzer as well. As are you going to play Bryn Forbes in the second half over Pat Connaughton? It seems like they get addicted to bad Pat Connaughton second half minutes at points, but Bryn Forbes led the NBA in points per touch this year. And so if you're looking for someone to maybe help bust up the zone and hit shots from the perimeter, I feel like he could be valuable. Again, this all comes back to who is Budenholzer playing, because the Bucks are more playoff proof to me. They are also definitively shallower than they were last year.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think we didn't mention too, he wasn't a huge factor in the playoffs, but when the Heat gave teams trouble with the zone, it was because Derrick Jones Jr. was at the top of it, and he's not there either. And he's also not really Derrick Jones Jr. anymore for some reason, because he hasn't translated in Portland. But that's just another thing that's sort of off the table for the Heat that worked really well.
I have, to not quote Brandon Jennings, Bucks in 5, just like you do.